The most underrated power move in the Bible. What if the most powerful move you ever make is the one no one sees? No throne, no crown, no spotlight. Just one man, sitting quietly, about to save an entire nation. Mordecai sitting at the king's gate. People pass him. He is ignored. He wasn't a king. He wasn't famous. He didn't command armies. He sat at the gate. But sometimes, the people closest to power are the most underestimated. One day, something shifts. A plot. A quiet conspiracy. To assassinate the king. Mordecai heard it. He could have ignored it. No one would know. But he speaks. He exposes the plot. And saves the king's life. And nothing happens. The act is recorded. But not rewarded. No celebration. No promotion. No recognition. Have you ever done the right thing and got nothing in return? This is where most people quit. But Mordecai? He stays. And then enters the real conflict. Haman. Powerful. Respected. Feared. Everyone bowing, except Mordecai. Mordecai refuses to bow. One quiet decision triggers a national crisis. Haman doesn't just get angry. He escalates. All the way. A decree is issued. An entire people marked for destruction. One man's integrity to his God just put a nation at risk. But here's the deeper layer. Mordecai isn't just sitting. He's thinking. Strategizing. Positioning. What if your current position isn't small? It's strategic. The king is unable to sleep. Wakes up and calls for the scrolls. And then, everything shifts. One sleepless night. One random decision. One forgotten record. Mordecai's name is read aloud. The man who was forgotten is suddenly remembered. And here's where the story flips. Completely. The enemy, Haman, becomes the one who honors him. The humiliation is public. The reversal, undeniable. The decree is overturned. The people are saved. The crisis ends. And the man at the center of it all never chased attention. Here's what most people miss. Mordecai didn't win because he was loud. He didn't rise because he forced it. He stayed consistent. He stayed loyal. He stayed ready. And when the moment came, he was already in position. How many people give up because no one sees them? How many quit because recognition didn't come fast enough? What if your delay is actually preparation? Back to the gate. Mordecai sits in the same place. Mordecai teaches us something powerful. Not every hero stands in the spotlight. Some sit quietly until the moment that changes everything. Comment below. Have you ever felt overlooked, but later realized it was preparation? Share this with someone who feels unseen right now. And subscribe to Lydia's Truth for cinematic stories that remind you your moment is coming.
Imagine winning the battle, but losing something far more important. A warrior makes a promise to God, a promise he cannot take back. And when victory comes, so does the cost. Before he was a leader, he was rejected, cast out by his own family, labeled unwanted. But rejection didn't break him. It trained him. Jephthah in exile, training, fighting, leading outcasts. He became something dangerous. A warrior with nothing to lose. And then, the twist no one expects. The same people who rejected him come back. They need him. Israel is under threat. They don't want him. They need him. Have you ever been rejected, then suddenly remembered when people needed something from you? Jephthah pauses, then agrees. But this time, on his terms. Before the battle, he does something unexpected. He makes a vow. Whisper to God. If you give me victory, whatever comes out of my house to greet me will be yours. It sounds spiritual. It sounds committed. But it's also dangerous. Have you ever promised something in a moment of pressure, without thinking it through? The battle begins. Strategy. Strength. Precision. Everything he learned in rejection now pays off. And then, victory. But Israel is saved. But the vow is waiting. This is where the story changes. From triumph to tension. Every step closer brings him closer to the promise he made. And then, the door opens. His daughter runs out joyfully, dancing, celebrating. Not a servant. Not an animal. Not a stranger. His daughter. Jephthah collapses emotionally. The moment of victory becomes the moment of breaking. This is where the story becomes difficult, painful, uncomfortable, because it forces a question. What happens when a promise becomes a burden? Jephthah keeps his vow, and history remembers both his courage and his cost. Here's what most people miss. God didn't ask for that vow. It came from Jephthah, from pressure, from emotion, from fear. Not every spiritual-sounding decision comes from wisdom. How many times have we done the same thing? Promised too much, committed too quickly, spoken without thinking. Have you ever made a decision that felt right in the moment, but cost more than you expected? Jephthah's story isn't just about courage. It's about consequences. Because sometimes, the greatest battles we fight aren't on the battlefield. They're in the decisions we make. Comment below. What promise or decision taught you the true cost of responsibility? Share this with someone who needs wisdom before making a big decision. And subscribe to Lydia's Truth for cinematic stories that don't just inspire, they challenge you to think.
Imagine seeing heaven and judgment at the same time. Angels, fire, glory beyond comprehension. And realizing you were never meant to see it. Prophets like Isaiah didn't just hear from God. They saw what most humans never will. A throne, high and lifted up. Light so intense, it feels alive. This wasn't a dream. This was reality, without the veil. Above the throne, beings unlike anything on earth. Seraphim, burning ones. They don't speak casually. They cry out, "Holy, holy, holy." Sound builds. The entire space trembles. And suddenly, everything changes. The prophet doesn't feel special. He feels exposed. Woe is me. I am undone. In the presence of perfection, imperfection becomes impossible to ignore. Then something shocking happens. Fire doesn't destroy him. It touches him and cleanses him. The same fire that represents judgment becomes restoration. Then, a question echoes through eternity. Whisper. Who will go for us? No one forces him. No pressure. Just a call. And somehow, after everything, he says, "Here I am. Send me." Because seeing heaven also reveals something else. Judgment. Consequences. Choices that echo beyond this life. Visions aren't given to entertain. They're given to wake people up. Here's the part most people miss. These visions aren't just about prophets. They're about us. Heaven shows what's right. Judgment shows what's at stake. And our choices decide which direction we move toward. So let me ask you something. If the veil lifted for just one moment, what would change in your life? Because once you truly see, you can't go back to living the same. Comment below. What moment made you see life differently? Share this with someone who needs a reminder of what truly matters. And subscribe to Lydia's Truth for more cinematic stories that don't just inspire, they awaken.
God asked a prophet to do something unthinkable, and it would break his heart. What if God asked you to love someone who would constantly betray you? Not once, not twice, but over and over again. Would you still obey? This isn't a love story. It's a story of obedience, pain, and a kind of love most people don't understand. Meet Hosea, a prophet called by God. But his assignment? It wasn't to preach first. It was to live a message. God tells him, "Go, marry a woman who will be unfaithful." This wasn't a warning. It was a command. Think about that for a second. Would you obey a command that you know will break your heart? Hosea marries Gomer. For a moment, everything feels normal, peaceful, hopeful. But beneath the surface, something is already shifting. She begins to drift. Not suddenly, but slowly. Have you ever watched something good slowly fall apart and felt powerless to stop it? She leaves. Again and again. Each time, deeper betrayal. And Hosea? He stays. He's not just heartbroken. He's living out God's pain. This wasn't just a failed marriage. It was a message. How many times can someone forgive before it feels impossible? She doesn't just leave. She loses everything. No status. No security. No dignity. She becomes a shadow of who she once was. And Hosea? Still watching, still waiting. This is where most people walk away. God speaks again. Go back. Love her again. Not just forgive her. Go and bring her back. Would you go back to the person who broke you? He finds her, broken, sold, forgotten. And he does the unthinkable. He buys her back. The man she betrayed becomes the one who redeems her. This is where the story shifts. Hosea wasn't just loving Gomer. He was showing how God loves us. We walk away. We choose other things. We fail, again and again. And yet, God still comes after us. Not because we deserve it, but because His love refuses to give up. So here's the question. Where have you run, thinking you've gone too far to come back? Because this story proves something powerful. You can't outrun a love that's determined to redeem you. Comment below. Have you ever experienced forgiveness you didn't deserve? Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe to Lydia's Truth for more cinematic Bible stories that don't just inform, they transform.